Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tim Cruz. I'm the Plymouth County District Attorney. And here with me today, Pembroke Police Chief Rick McDonald, retired Police Chief Rick Wall, retired Detective Sergeant Ted Kane, excuse me. I have Lieutenant Colonel John Mon of the Massachusetts State Police. I have Detective Lieutenant Lisa Buckley, who's assigned to the Plymouth DA's office. And we also are here today with members of the Hannon family, Judy and her husband, Rich, and their daughters, Julia and Jessica. On February 13th, 1984, 59-year-old Virginia Hannon was found strangled and stabbed in her home on West Street here in the town of Pembroke. From that day forward, members of the Pembroke Police, the Massachusetts State Police, and most of all, the family of Virginia Hannon have not forgotten and have sought justice for her unsolved murder. Every year, families and friends and law enforcement have gathered to mark the tragic anniversary of Virginia's death. Chief Wall and Detective Sergeant Kane will tell you that the murder of Virginia Hannon was not just a case for them. They never gave up. They were relentless. The Hannons became like family to these investigators, and no one in this room ever gave up on finding out who committed this heinous crime. Since the date of the murder, Massachusetts State Police and the Pembroke Police have continued their work. Police have interviewed witnesses, they've analyzed and tested evidence found at the crime scene, they've conducted DNA testing. They've retested items as DNA science has evolved and improved over the years. The police have fielded tips. They've used forensic genealogy testing through the Mass State Police Crime Lab. In May of 2018, our office worked with a forensic scientist and a chemist from the Mass State Police Crime Lab, and the police determined that we should do 3 more rounds of testing on various items taken from the crime scene, including broken glass from the door, nylon stockings, and bloody paper towels. After an exhaustive testing process, in January 2019, it was noted that the male DNA profile found on the items from Virginia Hannon's kitchen were all from the same unknown man. So, we went on to pursue YSTR genetic genealogy testing using identifiers and Parabon Nanolabs, a Virginia-based DNA technology company that is most widely known for revolutionizing the field of DNA forensics. We've used them in other cases here in Plymouth County. They've also been used in other cases here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Unfortunately, however, neither were able to give us information identifying this unknown male. Last year, Pembroke Police received a tip from a man who said that approximately 1 year prior, a man by the name of Jesse Aylward, A-Y-L-W-A-R-D, told the tipster that he murdered someone in Pembroke many years ago. The tipster also told the police that Aylward had just died the day before. Investigators preserved a DNA swab from the deceased Aylward at Brockton Hospital. Detectives searched a dwelling off Crescent Street where Aylward was believed to have been living. State police detectives assigned to our office obtained a warrant to obtain blood of Jesse Aylward from Brockton Hospital, and it was transported to the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab, where analysts were able to determine Aylward's DNA profile, which was then compared to the DNA found on the crime scene evidence. It was a match. Parabon Nanolabs continued to test other items from the crime scene, and on March 4th of this year, our officers notified that Parabon had concluded its last round of testing. Though this investigation has spanned more than 37 years, we have identified Virginia Hannon's killer, and it is Jesse Aylward. We have exhausted all of the evidence that we currently have, and it all points in the direction of Jesse Aylward. I would like to commend all of the work of law enforcement in this case, from Chief Wall, Detective Sergeant Kane, the Massachusetts State Police, the State Police Crime Lab, the Pembroke Police, all for their diligent efforts pursuing the killer of Virginia Hannon's all these years. I would also like to recognize the efforts of Trooper Mike Damasio from our offices, the DA's office, State Police CPAC unit, and Assistant DA Jen Sprague, who's here today, who heads up our unsolved homicide unit. My condolences continue to go out to the Hannon family. I hope that today brings some small measure of justice to this case and to their ability to go forward with their lives. I want to ask retired Chief Wall if he would step up and say a couple of words at this time regarding the ongoing work that's been done on this case from since I became an Assistant DA back in 1985. And that's a really long time ago, and I want to ask Rick Wall to come on up.
Good afternoon. We stand here with the Hannon family as we said we would. There's a lot of questions that we still would like to answer, and we may never get all of the answers, but we're never going to stop looking for exactly what happened and be able to give them the truth. I'd like to thank Jake Burns and Mike Damasio, who've been on the forefront in the last 5 years of really pushing towards following the evidence, take it where it is, and Detective Sergeant Ted Kane for never, ever letting it go. Thank you.
To the extent possible, I can answer questions to the extent that we can.
So Tim, do we know what the connection is between Jesse Aylward and Virginia Hannon?
No, no. We know about Aylward. We'll actually have a picture of him, a photograph, an old photograph of him that we'll be able to provide. But I'm unaware of the current connection from those two back then.
Did they know each other?
Unaware of that.
And does he have any criminal past?
Well, he did have criminal past, and that's where we have the photo from.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, can you tell us more about this, what the tipster told you about how this Jesse Aylward said that he may have killed somebody in Pembroke? How did that, is there more information you can give us about how that came about and what else was said?
There's really not a lot of information I can tell you about other than the fact that obviously this tipster knew this individual and they had conversations and he made those statements. And I mean, obviously then after Aylward passed, the day after is when we received this information, and fortunately at that time we were in a position to go get the forensics that we would need to do to corroborate that statement. I mean, obviously, as you know, in a lot of these investigations, lots of people say lots of things, and that's why it was very important for us to get that DNA and to make sure that it matched that unknown sample that we had from many years ago. Yes, Christine?
There are a number of names that have been circulating for years that were allegedly connected to this case. I hear the same, I mean, been covering this for over 30 years. Are those names still under consideration, or is Jesse the only suspect in this crime?
I think it's a fair statement to say that the evidence in this case that we have right now is exhausted. I would also say, however, that if there is anybody out there that may have additional information, we would certainly be willing to accept that and move forward. But all the evidentiary information that we have and trying to put these cases back together, we've already exhausted it.
Was he on your radar at any point during this investigation in the last couple of decades at all as a possible suspect?
I think there's been lots of people on and off the radar, but I'm not aware if Aylward was on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesse Aylward, he is dead, he's deceased.
He's dead.
And when did he die?
Probably a year back or so.
And the tipster is still alive, is that correct?
He was alive. Well, he's been alive. I believe he's still alive.
Okay, and the day after Jesse died, he called you?
Yeah, or he called the police. Yeah.
Called the police. And how do you spell Jesse's name, first and last name?
Jesse is Jesse, and Aylward is A-W, strike that, A-Y-L-W-A-R-D.
Thanks, say it one more time, A-Y.
A-Y-L-W-A-R-D.
Do we know his age or where he's from?
I think we have some of that information.
Okay. Is the tipster a friend or a relative?
I don't have that information.
So did Aylward live in Pembroke, did you say, on Crescent Street?
That's where we believe he was living when we went there with the warrant to get the information.
That's where he was living when he died? Do you know where he was in 1984?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you tell us more about his criminal background?
No, not this time, no. We'll have some information that we'll be able to provide after the conference.
Do we know if, I mean, I know there was a lot of speculation that it was a break-in gone wrong. Any information like that?
You know, that's obviously, what Chief Wall says, you know, you'd love to have a lot of this information, But, you know, the DNA gets us to the people, but it doesn't necessarily get us to what exactly happened. And I'm always hopeful that we'll be able to get that information to make sure that we can give some final resolution for all the victims in these cases, because that's really what it comes down to. And, you know, like the chief said, I mean, the victims are something that are never forgotten, and that's what we have to make sure that we remain paramount both in these times, that, you know, victims are not forgotten, and that justice may be delayed, but it can't be denied, and that we're in a position where we're going to do our jobs and follow where it takes us. And they may not be able to tie up every piece back and forth, you know, but what we have here, based upon the crime scene as we understand it and the DNA that we have, is Jesse Aylward committed the murder of Virginia Hannon.
His DNA is found where again? What piece
It's
of evidence?
on a nylon stocking. She was strangled. It was on a broken piece of glass, and it was on some bloody paper towels.
Okay. And it's the nylon stocking she was strangled with? His DNA is on that?
My understanding is, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Anywhere else that you've been able to test that, you know, when you said before,
We've tested everything you possibly could test, but remember, this happened back in 1984 when DNA was not known. And, you know, we're very fortunate. I feel fortunate that the troopers and the Pembroke Police from back then, maybe they didn't know it at the time, but by collecting and preserving evidence, they were able to really effectively solve this case, because without the DNA, we wouldn't know who did it.
but are those the only items that have the DNA on it, the unknown male DNA?
The Aylward's DNA,
Aylward's
yeah.
DNA. It
Yep.
doesn't show up on any other pieces?
No.
And have you accounted for anything else that you may have found in there?
There's no other, anything of evidentiary value at this time from the other piece of
No other
evidence we had.
unknown DNA, male DNA from the...
Not that I'm aware of, nope.
Does Jesse Aylward have any living relatives?
I don't know.
So there's nothing more on any potential motive with maybe the inheritance or anything else we could report on any motive at all?
I think it'd be, I'm not going to get into guesswork and speculation. I mean, this happened 37 years ago.
But did the tipster say, you know?
No, I'd tell, if we had that information, I'd tell you that. All I can tell you is what we know is that the tipster directed us to Aylward, and I'm glad that he did when he did, so that so we could get the DNA that we had, so we could corroborate that Aylward was involved and/or the individual that committed this heinous murder of Virginia Hannon back in 1984. I think that, you know, anything else is really guessing.
In what context did he just say, I just murdered a woman, or did he provide any more context in that conversation that they had?
I think, as I understand it, from what I've already relayed, that he said he killed somebody in Pembroke many years ago.
And he didn't say why he had done it, or?
I don't have that information.
Did Jesse say that on his deathbed, or was that something that he had said previously and this person just waited till he died?
Yeah, no, I don't believe so, but I don't know that. I know that he happened to die, and then the tipster came
Yeah,
forward.
okay.
So,
Okay. Well, I
Okay.
have to feel, you know, I know you don't have, you're over the finish line on some part of this, you're not completely with everything, but how do you guys all feel about having at least some answers here today?
you know, to me, unfortunately, here in Plymouth County, we have, since 1961, we have 107 unsolved homicides, dealing with 118 bodies. You know, and I think when you look at some of those older cases, especially back in the 60s and 70s, you know, crime scenes weren't collected like this one were. And you'd probably be in a better off position if that had happened. But like I said, we're guessing. You know, I would love to be able to tell you exactly what happened as pertains to, you know, Mrs. Hannon, but I can't. All I can tell you is what the evidence that we have is that we're confident that Aylward did it, and that he may be gone now, but we know who did it. And I'm hopeful for the Hannon family that they have some peace from that. And I'm hopeful that the community does too, because the community, I believe, has to understand that these cases may not be on the front page of the paper, they may not be in TV, but they're not forgotten. They're not. We have an entire unsolved homicide cases here in Plymouth County. We've been looking at them from as long as I've been DA. We've solved a large number of them. Many times the people are dead because it happened so long ago. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop looking. And I think that, you know, slow and steady wins the race. That's what I always say. You know, we may go step by step by step. And I know from the meetings that I observed, the meetings I was involved with, the conversations that we were all involved with over the years, so that this case was always in the forefront. You know, whenever they would talk about the Hannon unsolved murder, these people were there and they were committed to getting to the resolution of this. And I think it's rare to find that kind of commitment nowadays. So I just want to commend all the Pembroke Police and troopers and the prosecutors in my office who have worked on this case for the last 37 years. A lot of these people that started the investigations, they're retired, they're gone themselves. you know, and yet here we are. So, you know, I congratulate them on a job well done, and I would also say that, you know, we continue to fight for justice for the people in our community, for the people that are looking for answers, and there's a lot of answers we got to get to. So we'll just proceed from there.
Can we ask somebody from the family if they'd like to speak to us?
If they'd like to, sure.
Great.
Sure, come on up.
I would absolutely like to thank the police, Pembroke State DA's office, for never giving up. And I would hopefully, people hearing this person, who he is, might be able to think back and say, something might shake loose in their head, say, well, geez, I know that guy, and give us a little bit more information on who he was, why he was, and, you know, because it was senseless. They got nothing. They just killed her for whatever. I don't understand it, but these guys definitely went out of their way.
When did you find out? When were you told about this?
The next day,
It's the 6th, like March 6th or so? I think the 5th, the results came in. And
oh,
so
the results, yeah, today with
today you
you.
found out.
Yeah.
So can you just describe what's going through your head as you try to process this and your reaction to this news?
Well, it's nice to have a name, and to see that the effort that they put in wasn't wasted. And like I said, maybe it'll jar somebody's memory. They can come forward, say something, you know.
How are you thinking of Virginia now?
Well, I think it helps, you know, for sure.
We have her picture here, but we never met her. If you can just say, what was Virginia like, and what does it mean to have now at least identified the person responsible for her death?
Well, she was a great person, you know, great with the kids. She was a cook at the school. Fun to be around. She was just a great person, happy. So
Do you
I'm
feel like
happy.
there's justice for Virginia now?
Yes, definitely. I'm glad about it, you know.
And Aylward, does he mean anything to the family? Is anybody, you guys all must be thinking about trying to place him or anything. You guys come up with anything?
No. I just heard about it, you know. My father told me about it the next day, and that was it. You know, I don't really know anything more about it. So it's just these guys here that stood up and spent all this time doing it. I really want to say thank you, that's all.
Can you just have your name, please?
Richard Hannon.
Can you just talk about how long and hard this journey has been for the family?
Well, you don't forget, you know, and your hope goes on. And you got people that have your back, which is nice. That's all you can do. You know, and a little closure for her is nice.
A bit of a relief to at least have a name?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.